Welcome to another session of Voices of the Learning Network. I am Erin, your as ever present intrepid American host. Today, I am so excited about this conversation. We are going to chit chat with Gaelle Watson. She is a digital learning specialist, and we're going to talk about something that's different today. We are going to challenge you to trust up. That's right, trust up. So, Gaelle, thank you for joining me this morning. Why learning? Why the heck fire are you in learning?
Thank you so much, Erin. Yeah, that's a good question. I guess like a lot of people in learning, I fell into it when I first started to look for a job. In my 6 months gap as a French student to improve my English, which, as you can hear, hasn't been necessarily very successful. Still sound very French, whatever I do. But that's another topic on the learning front. So yes, I started in learning in the IT conferencing industry. And my boss at the time, which was almost 20, it was 20 years ago, they thought that webinars were the way forward, and we thought it was all mad. He decided that I was, as a French-speaking person, in charge of the French market, which I hated every single minute of doing webinars. But turns out that every subsequent job I had afterwards involved running webinars. And eventually I set up the virtual classroom system and processes for another organization. And there is, and that's very interesting because we always think about technology, that the technology is going to be the problem, right? How people are going to use it, how they're going to connect. But the main problems with technology, I think, is the human connection and how we transfer the skills we have in face-to-face environment where we're probably much more confident in navigating, although in a post-COVID world, so maybe there's nuances into that. But back then, and transferring this into a place where people were willing to open, willing to engage. So yeah, I fell into virtual training initially, totally by accident, pushed in, I would say. And now I really engage it. I see the opportunities of the tools are a vector of inclusion. Particularly for small businesses, also potential managers who can't travel. So it's a great tool, but it has to be done right.
So, speaking of doing it right and your ecosystem of digital learning, how do you do that? How do you engender trust, especially now with AI looming over everything to take it all over like the robot it is, which is not? How do you do that? How do you build trust?
Well, that's interesting because I talk about trust, but people who come to me talk to me about how can I do for my programs, whatever shape or form, so the learners get engaged. So the big questions has always been engagement, but you cannot have engagement without trust. And trust is actually in the digital environment, it's quite complex. There are so many layers of trust. So for example, let's think about it. So obviously, as the facilitator, you need to gain the trust of the learners. But now you've got a group of learners, right? And those learners need trust not only with the facilitators. They need to trust the facilitator is knowledgeable. But I would say that's probably the easiest one to do. The challenge also is like, with who else is in the group with me? Can I trust those people? If you look at an internal program, for example, like is there managers or is there people that could talk about what I'm going to say to my team, or people I know, people who's got influence? So can I really trust this environment to nurture me and not share outside, the information that I'm going to say, my experience, my what I can perceive as weaknesses. So you've got this, but obviously, you also have the problem of, or the problem, which is not a problem, it's a challenge of the international audience. I would say that in my field, 90% of what we do is in English, but it doesn't mean because people speak English that they all have the same command of the language. Thinking about some different cultures as well, people who are brought up in culture where it's less acceptable to make mistake would be very self-conscious of their command of the language, the way they talk, their accent, the fact that they could make typos, spelling mistake and grammar mistake. For example, the French are very obsessed with that. So you shouldn't be allowed to, write if you can't write beautiful French, and, it translates to other languages. So you've got this. So creating a space where people are comfortable to share. It can be an online community, it can be a virtual classroom. Feel comfortable that if they make a mistake, it's not going to be held against them. And also another key element of trust is the ability to laugh and to have fun. And I was talking to actually someone I'm doing some coaching with, and she was relaying how in a previous role, she couldn't connect. So they were both in the same country, same, organization, so the culture, but there was probably 20 years difference. So the rest of the team was much younger. And she said, I couldn't relate to any of the jokes. I couldn't relate. So I felt very disconnected about that element. And so that's the element of trust in the people within the group. And also, obviously, trust in technology is, and that's what you were saying, Erin, like, what's going to happen, like, if it's recorded, how the information going to be captured, how they're going to be used. In virtual classroom, it was a trend, like, oh, it's virtual, we're going to record it. So if people miss it, then they can catch up first. We're going to watch a 3 hours recording virtual classroom. Good luck with that, especially if they're all back to back, like, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and you've missed the Tuesday one and you have to listen to 3 hours before Wednesday. It's extraordinary. But also you would have people who potentially would think, what if the HR person, that watch it, what are they going to think? So that the recording affects definitely the trust in, what is going to be done, who is going to see it. So that's one of the element. And so you've got you can see that there are multiple level of challenges when you work in the digital world. And with the multicultural element is how we're going to express diverging ideas. So for example, like, my mother starts every sentence with no. So it's cultural, it's very easy in France to say no. No means no. Do you agree? No, I disagree. But it's not necessarily hostile. However, take a mixed group about anything. If you've got a strong, opinionated, vocal French person interrupting you, especially maybe, let's say, someone very polite, like a British person, it's very likely to shut down this person and say, well, I don't want to, I don't want to be attacked, which is perceived on the receiving end by being attacked. So it's also setting up rules on how to communicate, how to share, how to listen, and how to give feedback. But it's also a function of time. So if we were doing things perfectly, you set up your scene with your program, you explain the rules of the game, well, that's already 15 minutes gone. And you've bored to death the participants who are already doing the email. So they're absolutely not listening on what's going on, right? So, so it is a very it's a very fine and intuitive way of basically doing it. And I would say it's almost an art. There is not one fit all solution.
So, as you're looking into that art, and especially things like cultural accessibility and relatability, let's say you do have that person who says, I don't understand any of these sports analogies. What are some tips? How would you make sure that, as much as possible, everyone feels like I can access this, I can trust this session?
And that's my feeling is that the smaller the group, the better it is. So that's where the smaller group activities are so important. I was reading, I've been reading for work purposes, The Social Brain from Tracy Camilleri, Samantha Roki, and Robin Dunbar. I don't know if you're familiar with the Dunbar numbers. At the base of the number, you've got 5. And 4 to 5 people activities actually, well, I would say between 3 and 5 activities is actually a very good way of creating trust, because it's much easier to trust 3 people, to create a connections to, especially in a short period of time. And that's also something they explain in the book, is that you need time to connect with people. So the more people, the longer it's going to take to share experience. Even if you do an icebreaker, a lot of people just like feel a bit awkward about that. But if you fall into groups with 3 to 4 people, you can create a connection. You can start talking, sharing. You've got more time and space to do that. And that's definitely going to be a vector of trust. Also, you can present your output as a group. So when you go back to the, let's say, main room, so it's not, oh, it's my individual mistake, or it's what I experienced. It can be like more neutral, as in, we found out that some of us, most of us, half of us got these issues. So it is a lot more acceptable, a lot more threatening for the person sharing.
So I love this idea of turning our mistakes into learning opportunities and making mistakes actually positive. So, what are some more tips for us as we're building our digital curriculum to embrace the idea of mistakes and almost maybe push them and say, yeah, let's make mistakes?
Well, I think more and more we do think that in learning that people have to do things right. And I would say that as much as possible, simulations are great. They're a great tool. And there's some, I mean, I'm not advertising any technology, but there are a lot of them in all for all fields, whether it's leadership, management, finance, but having an opportunity to play with the system in a safe environment, and look at what's happened when you change one variable, it's very powerful.
That's awesome. I am finishing my notes as you're speaking. So, what has been one of your favorite learning experiences? A time when you felt very safe, you felt ability to express, and I think you felt culturally encompassed.
That's a very good question.
I know I put you
Um,
on the spot, but I love this idea of we learn by being learners.
And that's very true. I'm going to go in the opposite way. I've been doing a coaching certifications for the past 2 years, and that has really stretched me. I've been tremendously uncomfortable, and it really stretched. But on the other hand, I've learned so much more. So I think there's also this element is when you learn, you need to accept that it is going to be a little bit difficult. It's going to challenge you intellectually, put you out of your comfort zone. So yes, it is difficult, and that's why we need trust in the people we work with. and I've got an amazing mentor, but that's a different story.
All right. So, last words as we go off on our day, or we're starting our day, or we're just, I don't know, going for a run or something, and they're listening to this podcast. What can we take with us? It might be about trust. It might be about mistakes. It might be about cultural encompassing. Um, what are you going to send our listeners off with today?
Well, I would say that there is three pillars to creating engagement in any form of learning, and one is trust, and the other one is relevance. It's easier to create trust if the learner feels there is relevance. So if it's going to be a positive experience, experience for them, if they're going to gain some insight, and it's branch out into communicating about the learning and making it valuable. So if we've got trust and relevance, engagement will come.
Nice. Nice. Well, this has been another episode of our Voices of the Learning Network. Check out the show notes. We will list the book, Social Brain. So if you want to check that out, and also all of the connection notes and everything you need to connect with Gaelle, learn more about what she does, because she's amazing. I have to say, I met her last year at Connect, and if it's not on your calendar, put it on now. We just had the best conversation. So thank you so much for joining me. And those of you listening at home, thank you for joining us as well. Have a great day.